Om Jnana-timirandhasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshur-militam yena tasmai Shri-gurave Namaha. Today I'm going to speak in reply to some questions by Murari Das Brahmachari. Shall I read them out of the diary? That would be better. That would be more convenient. Where are the questions? Oh, I see. They're just in note forms. All right, I'll try and fluff them out. Which language is this? Just for sitting, is it? Just for convenience of sitting, is it? Okay. Is that convenient, or do you want any lady can translate into Hindi also? I said chalega, you have to speak a little loudly then. So, questions. In reading Srila Prabhupada's books, in which there are translations, in other words, Srila Prabhupada's translations of works of Shastra and works of previous acharyas. That means specifically Bhagavad Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Shri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Shri Ishopanishad, Shri Upadeshamrita, Narada Bhakti Sutra, part of that was translated by Prabhupada. The Nectar of Devotion is also a translation from previous acharyas, but the specific question here is that in these books which I mentioned, apart from the Nectar of Devotion, there are the shloka is given, or the verse, we can say for Chaitanya Charitamrita, Paya, more so, that's called, the Bengali verse. And then there is transliteration into what is called Roman script, diacriticized Roman script. Then each word is translated individually. Then there is the verse translation, and then Srila Prabhupada's purport. So the question is, should we read all of this? Well, if you don't read the Devanagari or Bengali script, you won't be able to read it. But should you read the verse? Also, Srila Prabhupada, in his preface to the Srimad Bhagavatam states that the subject matter is so arranged with the original verse, transliteration, word for word, meaning, verse translation, and purport, that anyone who reads this, by the end of the 9th canto, they are sure to be a God-realized soul. So, therein he recommends reading everything. I can say what I personally did. In the first time I read through Bhagavatam, I didn't read all the word. I don't think I ever read all the word-for-word meanings, actually. But as I read more times, I read through quite a few times. I haven't systematically read through the Bhagavatam for some time, but I go to different sections now, more like that. I often read the verse, and often I look at the word-for-word meaning also. So probably the first time, and it's quite a big job to read Prabhupada's books, so maybe the first time round you may like to read the English only. I think it's an individual choice. Those who have an Indian language, that means almost all of you here, as their mother tongue, with the exception of Tamil, Urdu. They by reading the verse you'll already know so many words, because those words are already in your language, because Indian languages, with the exception of Tamil, Urdu, I guess you can say English is an Indian language now also. Manipuri also, I believe, they're not much based on, there's not much Sanskrit in these languages. But in other languages, you'll automatically, you can pick up so much just by reading the verse. Just like, let's say a famous verse. Dehinosmin yatha dehe. So you may not know the Sanskrit, the specific meaning of dehino or dehe, but you know it's something connected with the body. And yatha, it's not used commonly in modern Indian languages, but if you read this Sanskrit, then you'll find many of these. These words are words like yata, tata, yatra, tatra, atra, sarvatra. They come again and again. Sarvatra, that's not used in common language, but it can be used. Did it say in Telugu, sarvatra? No. Alright. But anyway, these words, they come quite commonly, so you'll get to, just like yatra, tatra, and you have in Telugu what? Akra, and then akra, ikra, so it's similar. It means, yatra means where, tatra means there, atra means here, sarvatra means everywhere, kutra means where, like that. So you can pick that up easily. And then dehina shunyata dehe kaumaram yovanam jara. So all these words are there in all the Indian languages. Then what's the next line? Tata, yata, tata. How do you say that? It must be in Telugu also. You have some version of that? Yeah, in all Indian. Jaise taise. In Hindi it comes out like that. So yata tata. Just as, so. It means like yata. Tata dehantara. Deha antara. Antara means different, or in this case it means to change. Dehantara prapti. One gets a different body. Prapti. You have that word, must we have it in Telugu. There's a lot of Sanskrit in Telugu. Here in Secunderabad once, I think it was or in Hyderabad, this Bhakti Saurabh Narayan Maharaj, maybe some of you know him. I was discussing some matter with him once. This was years ago. And he pulled out something from his notes. He has written so many notes. And he said, listen to this. This was about the subject we were discussing. He started reading in Telugu. It was written in Telugu. He knows about seven or eight languages. So he was reading in Telugu. And I don't understand Telugu. I thought, why is he reading? He knows I don't understand Telugu. He said, no, you just listen. You'll understand it. And I understood it, more or less, because it was Sanskritized. And I know Bengali, especially Sanskritized Bengali. And so I could follow it. Actually, Prabhupada, I'm digressing a little bit here. But before he came to the West, in his, I believe it was in early Bhakti Godhead or one of his writings, he said that Sanskrit should be the state language of India. That was an issue when India achieved independence. What should be the state language? Sanskrit or Hindi? It came out as Hindi. Would have been better if it was Sanskrit. Then between Hindi, they had to choose this Kariboli or Raj Bhasha. They chose Karibol. All wrong decisions each time. Karibol means like this Delhi Punjabi mixed language. So, Prabhupada, he said that Sanskrit can be introduced, can be revived, not that it's dead. In the West, I grew up learning that Sanskrit was a dead language. Completely bogus. There are still thousands of people in India who speak Sanskrit. But they make this propaganda. But anyway, it's not very widely spoken. So Prabhupada said that the way we can reintroduce Sanskrit by teaching the vernacular languages, that means languages like Telugu, Bengali, Hindi, in the Sanskritized forms. So that instead of saying akara, ikara and all that, you could say yatra, tatra. And just like in Bengali, or in Hindi, that you can understand better. They may say kitab, which is a Urdu word. But you could say pustakam, pustak. Actually in Hindi would be pustak. Or Bengali boy. So you could say pustak, grantha. There are different words for book. So in this way, if everyone in every language used these words, even Tamil actually, there's plenty of Sanskrit in Tamil, but they're pretending it's not. They try to edit it all out. So in this way, it would be very easy for people to learn Sanskrit is one thing. And even if people went to other parts of India, they could quite easily understand each other if they use all the same verbs, nouns, adjectives, and they're some points in the structure of the language are a little different. Anyway, I make the point. Tata dehantara prapti dhira, dhira. Do you have that word in Telugu? No. Not used much. It should be there. There's no dhiras these days, that's why. Everyone's adhira. But it's quite a common name, at least in North India. Dhira. Or adhira is also quite a common name. Both. Opposite meaning, but both names for Krishna. Dhiras tatra, which here means in that matter. Na muhyati. Na is, in Telugu also you say na, something like that for negation? No. It's, in North Indian languages it's in various forms. And muhyati, that comes from moha. So if you read the verse, at least Indian speaking people, they can Indian language speaking people, they can especially Gita it's quite simple. Many of the words are used again and again in Gita. Atma, Karma, Bhagavan, Shraddha, Dharma, Guna. These words come again and again in Bhagavad Gita. So even if you're not from an Indian language background, like myself, by reading the verses you can pick up the meaning. Actually, Bhakti Swami, I was just listening last week, I think it was. He once asked Prabhupada if he could learn Sanskrit, which for him would have been quite easy because Bengali, which is his language background, is a lot of Sanskrit in it. And he's also very intelligent, Bhakti Swami. And he could have picked it up very easily, but Prabhupada said to him, why do you want to waste your time? There's so much work to do in spreading Krishna consciousness. He said there are so many Sanskrit pundits and they've got nothing to offer. Earlier he wrote to Gopal Krishna Maharaj that encouraging him to learn Sanskrit. He said, for you it would be very easy because you have an Indian language background. So then anyway, maybe 1 or 2 days later, Srila Prabhupada, he was speaking on the 12th canto of Bhagavatam and the symptoms of Kali Yuga. And he asked Bhakti Charu Maharaj to translate that, to read the verses from the Bhagavatam. At that time it wasn't translated, and ultimately Srila Prabhupada himself didn't personally translate that section. And then, so Bhakti Charu Maharaj started reading, and Prabhupada said, give the meaning. And he gave the meaning. And so Prabhupada said, you can understand. Actually that section, it's mostly, what is it? How does that first verse of that chapter go? Kalena Balina Rajan Nangshat Ayo. How does the verse begin? Atah Shocham. It's a list. Atah, which means thereafter. And then there's a list of terms like Shocham, Dharma, Bala, Daya. So it's the same words in any Indian language. And then Kalena Balina Rajan, O Raja. Shukadev Goswami speaking to Parikshit Maharaja. Kalena Balina, by the powerful influence of time. Nangshat Ayur, and that Nangshat, that's not a common verb, but it means it causes the decline of. Nangshat Ayur Balam Smriti, so causes decrease in Ayu, lifespan. I said it now and I forgot it now. Ayu Bala, bodily strength. Smriti, Smriti Shakti, ability to remember. So, should we read the verses and the words? First time through, maybe not. Maybe not the second time through. It's up to you. Again, it's up to you. But by reading, we'll find more depth by doing so. Because the translations, necessarily, something is lost in translation. It's not possible to convey everything that's in the original verse, even if one thing is the poetry of the verse. I mean, many of the verses are very beautiful of Bhagavatam. And then, of course, those who understand the language, they'll find there are so many subtle nuances in the verses. So, actually, if you want to try to convey everything, then you have to have footnotes. This Radhika Raman, who did his degree, he did his PhD at Oxford University on a section of Paramatma Sandarbha. He told me this. So I said, you must have had lots of footnotes. He said, yes, most of the book was footnotes. Because if you just translate it, the point is that there's so much packed into every statement that you can't just give one translation, or to explain the translation. You see, in the comments of the Acharyas and in the original writings of Vyasadeva, it's presumed that the reader already has so much background knowledge. As Krishna spoke to Arjuna, Bhagavad Gita. Obviously Krishna, of course he knew Arjuna very intimately, but he presumed that Arjuna had much background knowledge, and actually Arjuna did. Otherwise, Krishna was speaking to him about Adhibhuta, Adidaiva, Adiyagya, and of course Arjuna asked him then, what does this mean? But Krishna spoke those words, presuming that Arjuna understood them, and Arjuna at least had some superficial understanding, then he asked Krishna to explain it more. So, to explain those points to the new reader, it's a big topic. Actually, Srila Prabhupada hasn't done that elaborately in his commentary. To do so elaborately would require to write Bhagavad Gita as it is, much bigger than it is, several times bigger. Many of the terms Bhagavad Gita is Upanishad. It's all based on the Upanishads, or rather the Upanishads are based on Bhagavad Gita, but Bhagavad Gita chronologically, from our present position in time, seems to have come later than the Upanishads. So, by reading then you'll get so much more depth, and especially in reading Bhagavad Gita, because it's quite a compact work compared to Srimad Bhagavatam, which is elaborate. By reading the verses and trying to understand the meanings, we can find the themes and how the different verses relate to each other, because the same words are used again and again. Just like one word I'm going to discuss for one of the upcoming questions is the word karta, which means actor in the sense of performer of action. So this is a topic discussed in Bhagavad. The word karta comes again and again. The word prakriti, kala, all these words. So we can see when we see their use in the different verses, and then we can relate them to other verses. It's actually much easier to do that if we remember the verses. So it's for definitely we're going to get more depth if we read the verses and then the word for word meaning. It's often very interesting to see what meanings Srila Prabhupada gives. Often Srila Prabhupada's meanings seem to be not as it is. How about that? It may seem like that. Just like yagyartat karamanonyata, this verse. And Prabhupada translates yagya as Vishnu. Many years ago in Malaysia, I was speaking to a lawyer who was what she considers herself to be a follower of Shankaracharya. And she told me that we should take a fine. I guess we should warn in advance. It's the only way to stop the cell phones going off is to... Of course, it was said in English and Telugu. I think whose phone went off doesn't understand either of those languages. Cell phone aapka mobile band kijiye. Jara sa. Switch off karo. So she said she was reading Prabhupada's Gita and she saw Yagya in this context translated as Vishnu, and she thought, that doesn't seem right. It's just his bias. So she looked up how Shankaracharya had glossed this word, and Shankaracharya, he had translated Yagya as, any guesses? Vishnu. So then she was satisfied. Okay. But many words can be translated in different ways. And even the same word, it's very important to the word Atma, which maybe the most used, the most common noun in Bhagavad Gita. Someone could check that. Is used differently in different contexts. So it's very important to have it explained exactly what it means in each context. There's a story in the Upanishads about that, about how both Indra, the king of the Devas, Devaraj, And Virochana, I have a few questions. Anyway, Virochana, the king of the Asuras, both approached Brahma for Atma Gyan, to understand what is Atma. So Brahma told them that Atma means the body. Okay. So they went away. Virochana was very satisfied. He thought, oh, that's true. See, the self is the body. So he was very satisfied. Indra came back and said, is that all it means? Is there anything more to be understood? He said, yes, I'll teach you. Now, anyway, Virochana went away, now I'll teach you. So according to, it may be that according to one's eligibility, one understands this word in different ways. So, you can go deeper and deeper. There's no limit. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu said, Krishna Tulya Bhagavat Vibhu Sarvashray Prati Shloke Prati Okare Nana Arthakoy. He said that Srimad Bhagavatam is on the same level as Krishna. As Krishna is powerful and can give shelter to all, so the Bhagavatam. And in the Bhagavat, every verse and every syllable has various meanings. So Srila Prabhupada gave the central meaning, the essential meaning. In every drop of ink in Prabhupada's books, there's a vibration going on. Sarvadhaman Paritata Mame Kamshan. Even between the ink drops, every atom, every electron, neutron, and whatever else they found, it's all totally permeated with this. That's the message Srila Prabhupada is giving, which is the central message. But that may be understood in various ways. Therefore Srila Prabhupada said, we should study these books and discuss from varying perspectives. But all the perspectives come to the same perspective, which is surrender to Krishna. But that may be understood in various ways. Of course, it's not that everyone's going to be a great Pandit. Although anyone who's chanting Hare Krishna is a great Pandit. Not everyone will go so deeply, but the more we do, the better. That's one way to worship Krishna. And of course, we shouldn't think that we can understand Bhagavatam and Bhagavad Gita simply by intellectual application. We have to chant Hare Krishna. And that's the conclusion of all the books anyway, to chant Hare Krishna. So we should chant Hare Krishna and chant clearly, chant attentively, prayerfully, and dance in kirtan. We should dance in kirtan. That will help us. Simply by trying to apply our brains, we won't understand anything. We have to serve Krishna also. So, is that alright? The answer is answered. It's a great adventure. Srila Prabhupada writes about the Vedic adventure. He uses that term. Discovering Krishna. Krishna is present in the Bhagavatam. Narad Muni is present. Prabhupada writes, Narad Muni has kindly appeared in these pages of Bhagavatam. All the great acharyas are present. Hearing lectures. This is a question, another question from Murari Prabhu, he's specifically asking as my disciple, and it applies to other disciples of mine. In Sri Rangam, I said that I was in Sri Rangam at the recent festival there. I was speaking specifically to my disciples. And I said that as well as hearing Srila Prabhupada, you should hear me. Because so many disciples of Srila Prabhupada, they have different angles, you could say, on understanding Srila Prabhupada. What Prabhupada teaches. Prabhupada taught the same thing, people see it in different ways, and they have their different, they'll instruct differently on the basis of that. Just that recently in Bangalore, one disciple of mine gave an example of that. It's a bit of a gross example, but as it's gross, it relays the point that one guru in ISKCON, disciple of Srila Prabhupada, tells his lady disciples that they should come to the temple during the period of time which, well, she asked the question, they're not supposed to come. That's right. Or traditionally, they're not supposed to come during once a month. They don't come. You look bewildered. You don't know about this? You're too pure. There's one period in every month where ladies are considered unclean. They don't come to the temple. But he told them they can come because devotional service is more important than all these considerations. And I tell my lady disciples, not only on this point, men and women, often on these points I tell them what your grandparents did and their parents, you follow that. Just follow the tradition. There's a reason for it. All the great devotees in the past who are women, they followed this also. They didn't think that, well, my devotional service is more important, therefore, just like Pujari may pass stool and he thinks, well, I don't have to take bath because I'll just go on the altar anyway. So, this is just an example to show that there are differences, and my disciples, I'm teaching them in a certain way, so they should listen to what I say. And if you don't like it, don't become my disciple. Or if you think you made a mistake, well, you can accept someone else as your Shiksha Guru. But if you're going to be my disciple, you should understand what I'm saying and follow that. Otherwise, what's the meaning of sticking a picture of the Guru on the wall, waving some incense, saying Jai Guru Dev, and don't give a damn what he says? So, yeah, you should listen. Murari Prabhu's question is that, well, should we listen to other gurus also? Is that banned? No, it's not banned to listen to other gurus in ISKCON. That's not the meaning at all. Is there anything else you wanted to know about that?
No,
that was the point. No, yeah. But don't make it a buffet system. That you want to do something which is not allowed, so you listen to all the different gurus. When you find one who allows it, you see, all the gurus in ISKCON said that you should fast on Ekadashi, but one of them said it's okay if you eat grains. So, yeah, you see, he said that. And then another one said that you don't have to take bath before you go on the altar because it's all bhakti. So you see, he said that you take whatever you want from everyone and then you break every rule. And years ago in Bangladesh, I asked my godbrother who was there, why are you getting up at 8 o'clock every morning? He said, well, I don't sleep any more than you. You rest in the day. See, that was, and I said, yeah, but we're supposed to get up by 4 o'clock. He said, well, Prabhupada said his father used to get up a little late. So you see, he had some evidence. Do you follow my point? No, you stopped. Anyway, you missed that one. The meaning is, don't make an excuse. So he found what he considered a valid pramanam, evidence, for rising late in the morning, even though Srila Prabhupada's clear instruction is to rise early. And all spiritualists, not just in India, but all over the world, traditionally they rise early. I was, for a short time before I joined ISKCON, staying in a Catholic monastery in Ireland. Not as a monk, just as a visitor to see what they were doing. Their day started at 3 o'clock. They had a 5-hour morning program every morning. They're vegetarians too, but by the influence of modern age they stopped. They were gradually becoming non-vegetarian. They hoped I'd join them. I would have been the first in 20 years. So, that's it. Yeah, you can listen to other lectures. Take benefit wherever you can find it. It might be confusing if different people say different things. That's also there. But then you have to use your good intelligence to understand also. My understanding of my role as a guru is not just to tell you, see, this is it, and I said it means this, and you accept it. But my role is to speak in a manner to make you understand with your own intelligence. Then you can accept it. We don't want to make robots or fanatics that I said, so you just accept. That may be there in some cases if we don't understand. We may accept with the hope of, or with the understanding, I don't understand, but anyway I accept it, and maybe in course of time that will be revealed to me. Just like Srila Prabhupada, he once described how he was in Mayapur at Sri Chaitanya Mat, the institution of his Gurudev, the Akaraja Mat, or what should we say? It's the leading mat of all the Gauriya mats. So there was some commotion, a snake was crawling there. And Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur heard there's some commotion. He saw the snake and he said, kill it, which is normally done in the villages in Bengal, to kill a cobra. So there are many cobras in Bengal. They didn't know what to do because they were thinking, normally and you see a cobra crawling among humans, you kill it. That's the normally done thing. In Mayapur, I was there once during the rainy season. The place was crawling with cobras. In the rainy season, they come in the buildings. So many of them. So, presumably the devotees didn't know what to do because they think, devotees, we're not supposed to kill any living being. So Prabhupada, he thought that how is it that our Guru Dev ordered a snake to be killed? It doesn't seem to be Vaishnava behavior. But he didn't ask anyone about it. He didn't ask his guru or anyone else about it. But it remained a doubt in his mind. It wasn't a doubt that he thought my guru was wrong, but he just couldn't understand it. But he explained later when he was reading through Bhagavatam, he came through the verse of Prahlad Maharaj when he's speaking to Nrsimhadev about Nrsimha having killed Hiranyakashipu, and Prahlad says, Modeta api, Modeta sadurapi sarpa vrishchika hatya. Something like that. I think I got the word order mixed up. Anyway, the purport is that even a sadhu is very pleased when he sees that a snake or a scorpion is killed. So then Prabhupada thought, oh really? Oh, okay. Alright, now I understand. So like that. We may just accept some things without understanding everything. We can't understand everything. We try to understand everything, we'll go crazy. We can't understand everything, every detail about everything. Some things we just have to accept. But in general, we should try to understand intelligently. So, what's the next question? Who runs the material body? The super soul, is that the question?
Yes.
Who runs it? What do you mean, who runs it?
We always say that consciousness, when the soul is there, the body is conscious, hair grows, everything.
When the soul is there, the body functions. Yeah.
Actually, the functioning is happening because of the super soul.
Is this functioning happening because of the super soul? Ultimately, yes. Everything goes on. Mayadhyakshena prakritis. Material nature or that works under Krishna's supervision. Krishna makes the laws of nature. So one law of nature is that when the soul is present in the body functions, the hair grows, food digests, and so on. And when the soul leaves, it doesn't. So it's because of the presence of the soul that the body functions. And ultimately everything works under the supervision of the super soul. Is that the question? What is the layer covering the soul? Well, that's... Yeah, please ask it. Yeah.
I'd asked it already. What is the link between the soul and the body?
What is the link between the soul and the body? The link is the soul's false identification with the body. Srila Prabhupada used to quote, Deha smriti nahi ja shangsha bandhan kahata. A rhetorical question. That for one who does not remember the body, then where is the material bondage for such a person? Due to identification with the body, we consider it to be me. And thus we suffer and enjoy in this material existence, body after body. So then the question came, then who is experiencing pain and pleasure? Is that the Prabhupada sometimes used to quote that, he never gave the source, Asango hi ayam purusha, which means that the soul has no material content. But then we find, here are two words again in Bhagavad Gita, two words which come again and again and again. Sukh and Dukh. Or Sukham and Dukham. In Sukh, Dukh is Hindi or some other languages. Sukham, Dukham. So we find in Bhagavad Gita that Krishna refers to these. So if there's no, there must be Dukh. Dukh is an experience. Happiness and distress. So happiness is an experience. Distress is an experience. Matter does not experience. That which is conscious can experience. So the question, who is experiencing? Ultimately it must be the soul. Cannot be, matter does not experience anything. This is connected with the discussion which repeatedly comes on the verse Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha ahankara vimurhatma kartahamiti manyate. The bewildered soul under the influence of material nature thinks himself the performer of actions which are in actuality carried out by nature. So the Acharyas have commented on this in what might seem a very strange way. Krishna says, whoever thinks aham karta, I am the doer, whoever thinks like that is vimudhatma, a very big fool. But the Acharyas, they explain actually the soul is the karta, which seems to be just the opposite of what Krishna says. Krishna says material nature is the doer. But the Acharyas explain that the meaning of this verse is that due to ahankar, due to egoism, the vimudhatma, the big fool, thinks that he is an independent doer. He thinks I can do whatever I like. He's not an independent doer because he's acting within the sphere of material nature, and the material nature puts so many conditions on him, and it may seem sometimes for someone everything is going right, and he thinks whatever I do, everything comes out well, and he becomes very puffed up. He thinks I am the doer, but he doesn't consider that he's limited and conditioned by material nature. He's not the sole doer. He couldn't do anything unless there was material nature to do anything with. And material nature may cooperate with him, you could say. So it makes him see that he's the doer. Just like, for instance, we often find that sports stars are very puffed up. Isn't it? In the Indian cricket team, some of them are puffed up. Is it? Not all of them. Some of them, from my experience, it's a long time ago, you'd see some, I used to watch soccer. Some of them are very puffed up, these star players, and some of them, they're actually quite humble, even though they're a good player. So I guess in the Indian cricket team, someone's very puffed up. Is it? I don't. You don't watch it, I guess. You used to, not that long ago. So they become very puffed. They say, "See, I can hit the ball and get a 6 more than others." But then he may wake up one morning with such a pain in his arm or back that he can't even lift a bat, let alone hit a 6. I had this experience once in the winter in Vadodara, in Gujarat. Very cold. I got up in the morning, and in the winter I wear this kurta at night. So without thinking, I said, okay, I'll take it off, go to the bath. I couldn't take it off. I couldn't move my arm at all. In the night it became totally stiff. Couldn't move it due to the cold. Couldn't do anything. Eventually I got to the bath, tried to brush my teeth with my left hand, and I don't know what I did actually, but eventually, I think somehow or other someone helped me get it off, and I bathed and I went to Mangalarti, but it wasn't until later in the day that I could get normal movement. So we just take it for granted. We don't even think. We don't think that now I will scratch my head. Okay, arm, move up, little bit. Okay, stop. Move this way. Okay, come down, in, finger, move. Okay, do it. We don't think like that. We just go like that. We don't even think about it. We just take it for granted. We may not even be conscious of doing it. We just do it without even thinking about it at all. But then there may come a day when you can't move your arm at all, and then you realize, oops, I thought I could just do everything by myself. I thought I just took it for granted I could do all these things, but now I realize that I'm dependent upon the body, and the body is dependent upon, if we read Bhagavad Gita, you'll understand there are controllers. In Srimad Bhagavatam, you'll understand more. There are the demigods who control the different movements. And so the Vimughatma, the big fool, is someone who thinks I can do whatever I like, I'm independent, and that's it. But the soul ultimately is the doer, because the doer means one takes a conscious decision to act. Of course, I was giving the example of not thinking about what you're doing, but just like someone decides, okay, I will perform pious activities, so I can I will attain sukh. Or someone thinks, I don't believe in all these things. So they make a decision. They make a conscious decision to act in certain ways. And they get a result dependent upon that. So consciousness, the perception of happiness and distress, ultimately it's the soul. But then again we say the soul has no contact with material nature. The soul is Satchidanandamaya. Yes, but his consciousness is covered. That is the point. His consciousness is covered by ahankar, or the identification of the self with the body. And therefore he identifies with the body and considers the pleasure and the pain of the material body to be real. And as far as he's concerned, it is real. And it's real enough that Krishna advises us to rise above it. It is real in one sense. But in another sense it's not real because it's only a covering of our real consciousness. Oh, so there are a whole series of questions, and I think I covered them. Do you have any more?
There's another one.
Again, we have to chant Hare Krishna. This is an important point to understand, but at the same time, it's a subtle point. It's very subtle to understand. So we have to chant Hare Krishna, then Krishna will give us the intelligence to understand all these things. Sukshma. Did you use it for subtle? What word did you use? Sukshma. Bengali, Shukha. It's written the same way but pronounced differently. So you see, again, you'll find these words, if you read the Sanskrit of the verses, you'll find these words again and again. So that's why it's good to read the verses. Another point is that often the English doesn't properly reflect the meaning in the Sanskrit. It's not possible to find all the words. And just like Bhakti is translated, generally commentators translate as devotion. Srila Prabhupada translated as devotional service, but it has a much bigger field of meaning than can be expressed in the English. Not that you can't become fully self-realized by reading Prabhupada's books in English. You can, certainly. Everything will be revealed. So that's your question, or there was something else?
This first question was linked between body and soul. Then there was another question about body and subtle body. Because once I was with some devotees, I can't remember now, we were discussing, and there was someone in a coma.
Someone in a coma, yeah.
He was alive. Means his soul was there.
He's alive, but his consciousness is practically zero.
And the body didn't move. So then
the body doesn't move.
He's not in control. So the comment was made that the mind is the link between subtle body and the body.
The mind is the link between the subtle body and the gross body.
Yeah, so I was not sure on that.
I'm not sure about it either. Probably needs more research. We need to make a research institute. Ever heard me say that before? How many times? There's so many. Suhotra Swami, before he suddenly passed away, he was doing a lot of work in research into Vedic psychology. He wrote one book, Vedanta Psychology, which was a beginning. There was much more to do. It's very important, actually, like I say, research is very important because we're talking about, well, he didn't call the book Vedic psychology, he called it Vedanta psychology. That's an important distinction because there, just like there are Sankhya, the followers of Sankhya philosophy and even the Nirvisheshvadis who also claim to be followers of Vedanta, they'll all explain these points differently. It makes a lot of difference. Buddhists and Jains and different schools within Buddhism and Jainism, they'll also explain these things differently using the same basic concepts. Someone should specialize in all these things actually, to explain these points very clearly according to Gauriya Siddhanta. It's important. Otherwise we end up getting merged in the impersonal Brahman if we don't understand these points properly. And actually what happens, I've seen it several times, is our devotees, they delve into these topics without a proper basic understanding. And then they read all different books, and then they write something which is all Mayavad, and they think it's Bhakti. They don't understand themselves. So it is important to understand these things properly. You have a clue. Come and join the Research Institute. Yeah, what's your clue?
During coma, basically the body's environment should support the mind to receive the consciousness from the soul. So when there is a drop in the hardware, the software cannot act. So that way, the external...
Yeah, but the soul is ultimately not dependent upon any of these things. Right? The soul, you're using the analogy of hardware and software. But ultimately the soul is not dependent on any of these things, although it may appear to be so. Matter influences consciousness. That we see regularly. People may take different forms, different drugs. There are drugs for lifting people out of depression. There are drugs for depressing people who are hyperactive, or relaxing people who are overly stressed. Drunkenness is a state of altered consciousness, very common, caused by a change in the chemistry within the body due to ingestion of, in this case, ethyl alcohol. So matter affects consciousness. Consciousness also affects matter. It doesn't always work, but often if people feel sick, you can tell them, or if they just think, I feel good, they often feel good. And often people feel sick, there's nothing wrong with them actually, just they feel sick. They're hypochondriac. They think that they're always afraid of being sick. There's another word for that also, for psychologically induced sickness. You just think I'm sick. You're not actually sick. And there's in the West it's quite common. Someone goes on TV, they hold up a spoon, and they just look at it, and it bends over just by their willpower. And there are so many experiments like this that someone, by their willpower, they make a cat scream or something like that. They induce pain in others. Tantrics do this. Well, that's a little different. The tantrics send spirits. So matter influences consciousness, and consciousness can influence matter also. So, what's going on? Ultimately it's the soul. Matter cannot influence the consciousness of someone who's detached from matter. In this case of the coma, they're detached from matter, but not that they're liberated. They're very sinful, actually. Their system is temporarily shut down. Prabhupada said that people are very sinful. They go into a coma, while the demigods decide what to do with them, because they're so sinful. So, Hare Krishna. Any other question, or shall we finish there? Yes, you have a question.
The question is the second question what Maharaj is Prabhupada writes in a simple language that a guru he repeats the same message as his guru has repeated.
Yeah.
He's considered as guru. So it looks very simple, but quite often we see, like in the case of Prabhupada. So in simple language, everything should be same whenever all the gurus speak about Prabhupada.
Yeah.
If the same message is repeated, then why should there be any contradiction?
Interesting question. Guru means one who repeats what his guru said. Yeah, I'm just repeating it now. Paraphrasing it. The guru means one who repeats what his guru said. So why should there be differences among disciples of the same guru? Why should they teach different things? Everything should be very simple. Very interesting question. There is a verse in this regard which I don't remember. The confusion arises because of the situation of spirit within matter produces a situation which is, it can never be wholesome. It's this wholesome, in this case it means it can never be, what should I say in Hindi? It can never be samanjasa. It can never be nice. It can never be properly harmonious. Harmonious means prayukt. The two don't sit together properly. Matter and spirit. So the Shastra has one message ultimately, but it appears to have many messages. And different levels of teaching are there for people at different levels of eligibility, adhikar. And confusion is often caused by people who hear a message which is meant for a person of higher eligibility, and they interpret it on their own level, just like Virochana. I gave that example. Actually, Brahma said that Atma means body, which is not incorrect, but it's not the only meaning, it's not the highest or the ultimate meaning. It's not the material body. So, different directions are given for different people on different levels of eligibility, and one who's expert can understand all of these, and again, the interaction of spirit and matter. Just like that example, devotional service is a higher consideration than any social consideration. That's true. So then why don't I say that my female disciples can come to the temple during their ritu or period? Why is that if devotional service is absolute? Because there are other considerations as long as we're in this material world. Devotional service is absolute, but we're not on the absolute platform, which is why we're in this material world. Therefore, we have to act with consideration of this world. Shankaracharya's teachings are that this world is false and spiritual life begins with sannyas. People say, I'm a follower of Shankaracharya. If you're actually a follower, you have to take sannyas. Of course, he also recommended for persons who are not on that level to follow other Vedic principles. But if you want to actually follow his Advaitavad with all its implications, you have to take sannyas. That's what he did. He went to different people and preached to them, and they were defeated by him, and they took sannyas. There's nothing else left for them to do, because this world is false, according to his teaching. So, actually everyone should just leave this world and serve Krishna fully without any material considerations. But we can't get free of material considerations as long as we are in this world. If we say, and there are some devotees like Vangshidas Babaji Maharaj, they had practically no contact with this world and no consideration of it. Vangshidas Babaji Maharaj probably couldn't have lived as he lived in any other country than India, because people had some appreciation. If he had been in England, if he behaved like that, just not talking to anyone, going around almost naked, never bathing, he'd probably he'd be locked up. The British tried to do, there was one famous in Varanasi, this, what was his name? Trilanga Swami, something like that. In the 19th century, he used to go around naked. Tailanga, I think that was his name, oily body. So he used to go around naked, and of course he's not the only one. There's these Digamba Jain sadhus. Even nowadays in Gujarat, you see them walking around naked. No one cares. Sadhu, Naga Babas. Anyway, the British, they locked him up in prison. And then he was out. They locked him up. He came out by Yoga Shakti. They tried a few times and then they gave up. So, but if most people, just like for instance, if you think, I'm not this body, okay, then there's no need to eat or brush my teeth. Vangshidas Babaji, he was like that. He didn't eat, hardly. Sometimes he ate. But most of the time he didn't eat. He never pastu, unless you've never seen to pastu. He had no particular time for sleeping, if he slept at all. So if you try to do that, then you'll collapse within a short time, because we're not on that level of realization. So there are different rules for different people on different levels, and according to one's level of eligibility, one should follow that. So therefore we find also Srila Prabhupada also said different things in to different devotees in different circumstances. And due to inability to understand which instructions are meant for which people, confusion arises. Once in Medchal, Hyderabad farm, Srila Prabhupada came in the morning and saw that dal from the prasad the evening before, it was dried up and all over the floor. No one had bothered to clean at night. And there was dried dal all over in different places on the floor. So Srila Prabhupada, he became very angry. And said, why is this not cleaned up? Clean it up immediately. And one devotee, Patit Udharan. It could be pronounced Udharan or Udharan, but he pronounced it Udharan. Could be either way. He got out a penknife. You know what that is? A little knife this big, and it folds up, you open it up, and he started scraping away at it, which is ridiculous. He started scraping the dried dal. And that's ridiculous. You have to bring buckets of water and get a coconut brush and clean it like that. So Prabhupada, seeing this, he was so disgusted at the foolishness of my esteemed godbrother. I respect him. So Prabhupada, seeing this, he said, you should use it to cut your throat. Well, why don't you cut your throat with it? Referring to the knife. Now if Patitu Dharan Prabhu thought, oh, my guru wants me to cut my throat, you may say, a very good disciple, he did it. But no, that would be stupid. Prabhupada doesn't want him to cut his throat, he wants him to clean the floor properly. So sometimes it requires some intelligence. Actually, all the time it requires some intelligence to understand all these points. So yeah, that example I gave. One guru says that women should, actually I think many, because most of our gurus are from the West. Hare Krishna. Bharat Mata Ki Jai. There's something good in the culture actually. People coming from the West, they often can't understand, because it's normal in the West that women in those few days, they just go on with life. Whereas in Indian culture they don't. And now it's coming in Indian culture because it's urban culture. And women have to go to work and all this kind of thing. So they don't say anything. What's the difference, As far as they're concerned, what's the difference? From the Shastric point of view, it's unclean. What to speak of, the mind is, so I'm told, during that time, the mind, the husbands, they can tell. The mind also, it's ascribed to hormonal disorders. So the Vedic system is, the women, they have a little hut, a little kuti. They go there, they sit there for a few days, and they have a break from all their work. They relax, and when it's over, they come out, take bath, and go on with life. But they don't go to the temple, they don't even come in the house. What to speak of going to the temple? So, but devotional service is beyond all material considerations. Well, I would say that if you want to use that for justifying women come to the temple, then stop eating. Whoever says that should stop eating, because eating is also a material consideration. You're not eating just because it's prasadam, you're eating to get some strength to work. Stop eating and sleeping, then say all these things. But if you're not on that level, then follow the Vedic injunctions. So it's these discrepancies come because Srila Prabhupada may say different things in different times, places, and circumstances. So the philosophy can be misunderstood and applied in different ways due to various understandings. Should we play all kinds of instruments in the temple? Well, we could do. People might find it more attractive. More people might come. In the very early days of ISKCON, even before ISKCON was formed, Prabhupada encouraged that. But then later he said to use only mridanga and kartals, not even harmonium. He stopped no harmonium even. Very clearly Prabhupada said in the temple. He said we don't want to overemphasize music. If you emphasize music, more people may come. And then Prabhupada said, well, the point is to come for Harinam. So many of these questions arise for preaching. For preaching, we may do so many things to attract people. We may play all kinds of instruments. But then should we do it in the temple also? Prabhupada said no. Because we don't want to get too much diverted to music. Now you could say, well, Krishna likes music. There's so many instruments we find described in Bhagavatam. So the discussion can go this way and that way. And I'm just giving this as an example. And that's why ultimately there has to be a guru to say, look, this is the line. And the line may shift also according to circumstances. In the temple, mridanga, kartal. Outside, whatever brings the public, we may say. That's how I understand Srila Prabhupada's instructions on this. Someone may say differently. In some places in ISKCON they have a whole orchestra in the temple room daily. Yeah, so, alright, one more question, then we'll finish.
Ladies not coming to the temple.
Yeah, actually I was just giving that as an example, but it's, yeah. I was just giving that as an example. It's not the actual subject matter of the discussion, but it's used as an example. Yeah. Yeah, there's a question.
Many devotees have this confusion whether, like, if someone dies in the family.
If someone dies in the family, again, ashoch. If someone dies in the family, what you should do? What should you do? The child is born, sometimes the child is born in California. You're sitting here in Hyderabad. Should you follow all these rules? Well, I quote Srila Prabhupada on this, or my godbrother, when I was in Delhi in 1977, approximately, it must have been August 1977. A godbrother of mine was staying in the ashram, but he didn't come to any of the temple programs. I asked him, after 1 or 2 days, I asked him, why don't you go to the temple at all? You're living in the ashram. He said, because actually I live in Vrindavan, but my daughter, she just died. So Srila Prabhupada told me not to come to the temple for, I can't remember how many days. I don't know why he came to Delhi. Maybe he wanted to get away from the scene of his grief. His young daughter, who was about 4 years old, she took some medicines that had been thrown away and swallowed them and died. So in that, Prabhupada told him, don't come to the temple. So I can cite that. In other words, it seems that it should be followed. And that's there in the Nectar of Devotion also, that says that you should follow these rules according to your caste. States that. There may be some adjustment for the modern age. That's why gurus are required to instruct disciples on how to follow the Vedic injunctions according to the time, or the particular age and situation, and for the individual also. General rules are there, maybe specific for some individual. That's another reason why this Ritvik idea is such nonsense. Then you're just on your own, no guidance. Yeah. You say, well, Prabhupada guided me. Yeah, but then you read all of Prabhupada's books, and then you have to decide yourself. That means you actually don't have a guru.
Maharaj, you want to ask that the material body has the leg and everything. Has the spiritual soul also?
Has the spirit soul also got legs, hands? Yes. But in the material situation, that is unmanifest. That's why we find in Shastra it stated that the size of the soul, balagra shatabhagasya shatada kalpitasya. Yeah, you got it. You see, he knows. You're translating the Sanskrit before I... No, I only said it in Sanskrit, did I? You see, if you know the Sanskrit, what's the Hindi word for hair? Okay, so balasya, immediately you could understand what I was going to say. Shatabhagasya kalpita, I just said it, now I forgot. So it says, if you can imagine the hair split 100 times and another 100 times, then jiva sukshmo swarupo yam, this jiva has such a sukshma swarupa. It's easier to say in Sanskrit. If you say in Sanskrit, it's easy. And then you have to think how to translate that into English. Has such a subtle form. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada